Husband's been secretly working on a new life in another country with a woman he's been dating secretly. And I'm not going to pause or let the room tell the story for me. I'm Sarah, I'm 31, and I'm a travel nurse, which means I've built a career out of packing neatly, adapting fast, and keeping other people's hearts beating even when mine occasionally forgets the rhythm. The day it cracked open started almost stupidly tender. Dawn at the kitchen window, the kind of pink-orange that looks like the sky is embarrassed by its own beauty. I was eating cold peaches over the sink like a teenager because I had the early shift, and he wandered in with that sleep-tipped smile he wears when he thinks he's charming. He kissed my cheek, said something about the espresso machine being moody, and I said something about the espresso machine having boundaries. He laughed, shook his head, and then casually, too casually, asked me what date I was flying to Darwin for the neonatal contract. He knows my schedule like the dog knows where the biscuits live, and still he asked 3 times, spinning the dates like a coin he wanted to land on its side. I told him, slower each time, and watched him tuck the knowledge away like a squirrel with a shiny thing. He left for a client breakfast in boots that haven't seen a field in 5 years. Tom works in international partnerships, which is a fancy way to say he's very good at telling rooms full of men who love glass tables what they want to hear. He's also good at coming home with the kind of hotel toiletries that make you forgive everything for exactly 12 minutes. We have a drawer full of tiny soaps that smell like the richer version of eucalyptus. When the door closed, the house did its invisible exhale. I wiped Peach off my wrist and noticed his carry-on open in the hall, half-packed. Socks. 2 crisp linen shirts. The green sweater he only takes when he wants strangers to imagine he reads near fireplaces. On top, his passport face down like a card he wasn't ready to show. I didn't flip it. That's the part of the story where you either become a detective or you remain a wife. I made the bed instead and went to work to listen to 2-pound humans insist on staying. On my lunch break, I sat with my tuna sandwich doing its best impression of optimism and opened our shared calendar to book my flight. A new color bar hovered over the weekend after I'd be gone, silver, not our usual blue or red. Title, Site Visit, APAC Expansion. Location, blank. He'd never used silver. I stared at the rectangle like it could confess. It didn't. My phone buzzed. A notification from a budgeting app that only pings when something large tries to leave the room. International transfer initiated. I wasn't the primary on his new fancy bank, but I was the emergency contact because he'd said, with that adorable shrug boys carry into their 30s, "You're the most responsible person I know." The app preview showed 5 bold numbers and a currency I read like a second language from work and travel, euros. There are moments in a hospital when your hands move before your brain catches up because training built a bridge for you. My training is numbers and nurses report. My hands opened a browser. Routine. Our joint account showed a transfer to Venmora Holdings, a name so smug it could hold a martini. I clicked, the details stayed gray like a closed door. I called the bank and got exactly the hold music you're imagining. A woman named Tessa answered in a tone that says she's being measured on how often she says delightful. She could not, would not, and did not disclose anything. But when I asked, like a person in a library, if the recipient was based in Portugal, she cleared her throat and said, "We send money all over the world," with a particular upward lilt on world that sounded like a map with one country circled. I thanked her in a voice I use with panicked fathers and closed my laptop softly like it might bruise. That night he came home glowing like people do when they've eaten the good kind of seafood. He kissed me, he complimented the messy knot of my hair, he poured wine without asking. I wanted to ask about silver calendar events in Venmora, about the way his eyes kept darting to his phone like sparrows. Instead, I told him a story about a preemie who wrapped her fist around my pinky and refused to let go even after she fell asleep. He cried, which is the exhausting thing about loving men like him. They feel things honestly while they are also building a separate life in their Notes app. Maybe this would have been a slow, ugly simmer if not for the scarf, which is ridiculous because who in Australia needs a scarf in late spring? But there it was, draped over the back of his office chair, thin and blue-gray, soft in that expensive, whispery way. Not my color. Not a gift I'd given. It smelled like a person who buys the same perfume every year. I picked it up and a slip of paper butterflied to the floor, a receipt from a cafe near the Portuguese consulate, flat whites 2 and 1 pastel de nata with a smiley face drawn in the server's looping hand. The name on the credit card was his. The note scribbled at the bottom said 8 logo see you soon with a phone number. I took a photo. I folded the scarf into a tidy square and left it exactly where I found it, like a good ghost. The next morning I tried on denial like a dress that might still fit. It pinched under the arms. I took it off and put on my scrubs and asked the universe to give me 10 newborn cries and 0 adult lies. I got 8 and 3 respectively. After shift, I sat in my car and dialed the number on the receipt. It rang twice and a woman answered in English that carried music in it. "Hello," she said, and I forgot how to speak for half a second because the tone was everything I'm a sucker for, curious, amused, like she keeps a secret on her tongue and might share it if you ask nicely. "Hi," I said, "is this the cafe?" She laughed, warm, unbothered. "We are many things, cafe is one." I wanted to hang up and go home and live inside a small, manageable lie. Instead I said, "I think my husband left a scarf." I don't know why I said husband first. Maybe I needed that word to meet the air between us. "Ah," she said, like a woman who has been preparing for this particular war since birth. "He leaves many things. There's a professional distance nurses keep when people bleed stories all over you." Mine slid into place. "What's your name?" I asked. "Anna," she said. "Of course. The universe adores symmetry." "Anna," I repeated, like I was lining up a shot. "I'm Sarah. We share a person." A small silence. Then the tiniest sigh. "Yes," she said. "We do. When you're afraid of dying in the dumbest way, saying the wrong word and bleeding out, you speak slow." She told me pieces. He'd been in Lisbon in March for a conference and had walked into her cafe and asked which cake was the best and made her choose, which is exactly his move, the same script he used on me over ramen on a rain-wet street 7 years ago. He'd come back in May, then again just last week, which was when I thought he'd been in Melbourne charming whatever boardroom needed dimples. They'd seen each other. The phrase sounded like it required a translator. He'd told her things. He'd told her he loved the way Portuguese builds a sentence like a bridge. He'd told her he was half moved already, which is a hell of a thing to tell a woman who washes your coffee cup. "Did he tell you he was married?" I asked, because I needed to hear it from someone else's mouth the way you need a second nurse to confirm a medication. "He told me you were becoming different," she said carefully, like she was stepping around a sleeping dog. "That you wanted different things now." I laughed then, a short, cracked sound, because I know exactly what sentence of mine he reproposed. I told him a month ago in a gentle voice that I wanted to stop pretending we liked the same life when some days we clearly didn't. He'd nodded like a good student, got up for water, and then presumably booked a one-way ticket to a version of himself that didn't have to share. "I'm not going to scream at you," I said, suddenly tired. "I don't have the energy to be mythological. I'm going to ask you one favor. Send me whatever he promised you. Not for ammunition. For clarity." She went quiet. I heard the clatter of plates, a door, the soft acoustic guitar that follows a certain kind of woman around. "You will not hurt me with it?" she asked, so small I almost forgave her on reflex. "No," I said. "You are not my sport." She sent the screenshots to an email I made in high school and never deleted because it holds all my teenage ghosts. 5 minutes later, my inbox bloomed. Photos of the river at dusk, his hand on a table I did not recognize, a selfie of them under tiles with swallows painted into the blue. Then the text threads, his metaphors like little lifeboats he throws when he wants to feel brave. "I dream in Portuguese now," he'd typed, which is hilarious because this man stumps the subjunctive in English. "Imagine autumn here," he'd written, "our place above the tram line, you opening the cafe late because mornings are for us." He had sent her a listing link for an apartment with 2 small balconies and floor-to-ceiling glass and rent we could never justify unless he was siphoning off more than charm. He'd sent a screenshot of an airline email, "Welcome to our gold tier." He'd written, "I'll move first, I can set up the papers." Venmora handles residences for startups. 2 months, maybe 3. He'd added a photo of his green sweater folded on a bed and wrote, "This will live in your closet." There is a kind of crying that never makes it to your face. It stays in the throat, it salts your tongue, it makes you speak like you've been running. I wrote Anna back. Thank you. I'm sorry he made you a story. I won't contact you again, and I hope for your sake you don't contact him either, because he will always be writing. She replied with one word that sounded like surrender and weather: obrigada. I forwarded the emails to myself to an account with a grown-up name, and then closed the laptop with a finality that made the dog thump her tail. I took a shower so hot it made promises and stood in the steam repeating a truth until it stuck. He is not the only person I can love. The moment I confronted him was not cinematic. It was Tuesday. I'd roasted vegetables and made couscous like I was auditioning for a calm life. He came in humming, kissed me, said the house smelled like Sundays. We Saturday. We ate. I waited until he took a second helping because I am not a monster. Then I pushed my bowl back, placed my phone on the table, and made my voice the one I use when a father is touching his baby for the first time with hands that won't stop shaking. I know, I said. He tried to perform confusion, and I handed him the refusal to participate. Don't, I said. I have the transfers. I have the apartment listing. I have Anna's scarf and her phone number, and I have a copy of your fantasy sent to a poor, lovely woman who wants to be someone's home. He went very still the way deer do before they either bolt or fall. His eyes did the math. Then, surprisingly quickly, he nodded. No tears. No filibuster. Just a small, clear I did this, and I experienced an emotion I did not anticipate: relief. It's hard to fight fog. It's easier to fight a wall. What's the plan? I asked, because I knew there was a plan. Men like him don't cheat. They switch apartments across continents and call it destiny. Lisbon first, he said quietly, looking at his hands. Then maybe Porto. There's a role, they want me to build a team. And what happens to me? I asked, and he had the grace to wince. He had not mapped me on his new city. He had made me negative space, the shape around the object. I told myself you'd be happier without me, he said, which is a kindness with a knife in its sleeve. I told myself you wanted adventure. I wanted us, I said, and my voice did not break. Not this. Never this. Here's where people like to put a scream. I didn't have one. What I had was a list, a nurse's chart in my head. I slid a piece of paper over to him with bullet points and empty squares to tick. You email Anna now and tell her I exist and you lied and you are not moving. You send a copy to me. You transfer every cent you sent out of our savings back into an account with my name only because I will not fund your midlife tourism. You cancel flights. You write your boss and say you can't take the relocation for family reasons, and you copy me so I can see the timestamp and sleep without imagining airplanes. You pack a bag and go to Kit's for 2 weeks because I need the house to stop smelling like your sweater. You book a therapist who believes in verbs. You tell your mother so I don't have to hold the weight of your story alone. He began, and I lifted a hand and watched my own fingers steady. Do it now, I said. He did. Thumbs clumsy for the first time in his life. He typed "I deceived my wife" and sent it, and the phone vibrated with Anna's reply, 3 words I will never repeat because they were not meant for me and because I refused to let his other life live off our air any longer. He made transfers. He forwarded confirmations. He texted his boss. He packed. He looked up at me with the face of a boy who has finally been asked to stand in the corner and think. Can I hug you? He asked. Hug your consequences, I said, and he nodded like he understood English for the first time. He left. The house shut its eyes. I slept badly and woke like someone had turned gravity up. I went to work and held a baby who had been born early into the kind of courage we write on motivational posters and felt my chest lift, just barely. I cried in the staff bathroom where all the stories go to learn they're not special, and then I washed my face and called my sister and told her everything with the flat efficiency of a discharge plan. In the absence of men, women happen. My friends assembled quietly. One brought a pie with a ridiculous lattice like her faith in carbohydrates could stitch me. One brought a toolkit and fixed the door that always sticks when it rains, So it won't catch you on your way out or in, she said. Maya crawled into my bed in leggings and socks and watched trash TV beside me while I read Anna's messages one more time like inspection and then, fiercely like a ritual, deleted them. Proud of your boring, she whispered, and that became my benediction. Be boring, Sarah. Choose the dull verbs that save you. The 2 weeks were not heroic. They were quiet mechanics. I met with a lawyer whose hair looked like a helmet and whose voice sounded like a good judge. We drew contingencies with pencils, which is how you know a thing is kind. I went to therapy and said I am not unlovable just because someone wanted a postcard version of me, and my therapist nodded like a lighthouse. I wrote a list on the inside of our pantry with a chalk marker we never use: no secret accounts, no secret addresses, no secret audiences. It looked ridiculous next to the jar of cumin, but every time I reached past it I felt something tall inside me stand straighter. He sent updates without adjectives. I appreciated the grammar. He asked to come home and talk. I said yes because grown people don't test each other, they meet. He sat on the couch and looked both older and truer. I wanted to be interesting, he said, hands open like a man with no offerings left. I followed the part of me that thinks new cities fix old selves. I forgot that new cities are just old selves with unfamiliar bakeries. He took a breath. I will do whatever you ask. Or nothing you ask. Or the thing between. Just tell me how to not be the man I made. By doing boring, I said. Boring like surgery. Boring like washing your hands every time whether anyone's watching or not. We made rules, we printed them. Phone in the bowl at 9. Calendars merged like we were anxious to be predictable. He signed a thing my lawyer wrote that would make any future checks on my story bounce back in my favor. He stayed with his brother another week because I asked him to and because he finally understood that a boundary is not a dare but a fence around something that still wants to grow. And then, because life refuses to wait for your paperwork, the world turned onward. Babies were born and refused to go quietly. I stood in a glowbox room while a colleague sang the ABCs to a child who weighed as much as a ripe mango. The song made me cry for the first time in days, the smallness, the goal of survival. I went home and cooked something too garlicky and texted a photo to the group chat and everyone said it looked perfect because love is an echo. I stood on the balcony with a mug of tea and the city smelled like drizzle and chips and possibility, and for a moment I forgot that a part of me was busy healing and just felt myself existing. He moved back into the guest room, which is where men should live when they are still auditioning. We walked the slow walk of people who've both looked over a cliff and decided not to jump because there are better views inside. He showed up to therapy like church. He told his mother without making me the argument for his suffering. He took me to dinner at a place we'd never been, no trips abroad, no glossy fantasy, just a small restaurant where the waitress called us love and the chef wore a bandana like a dare. We ate slowly. He didn't touch his phone. When he looked at me, he did not perform the looking. He simply did it. Do I love him? Yes. Does that mean we're fine? No. It means I'm practicing a love that prefers verbs. He empties the dishwasher without a sonnet. He shows up to Tuesday check-ins with his one truth, one ask, one gratitude written down because he cannot be trusted to keep it in his head. I do the same because fairness is not a compromise, it's the only way the floor holds. When he says, I'm restless, we take a walk instead of a flight. When I say, I'm scared you'll leave while I'm asleep, he moves his pillow closer and we both count the ceiling fans like children until the fear falls off the bed first. As for Anna, she is a city where I will someday take myself just to prove that luck is not only theirs. I've looked up flights and then closed the tab because I refuse to turn healing into tourism. I'll go when it's a trip, not a test. I'll stand by a tile wall and drink a coffee and let my life be the only interesting thing about the moment. If you are me 3 months ago, spoon over the sink, tasting a morning you thought you owned, here's what I can hand you like a hot cup. Write down every fact before you write any fiction. Ask for receipts, financial and emotional. Choose one friend who doesn't flinch when you say the worst parts. Make a plan that looks boring on paper. Do not set yourself on fire to keep anyone's story warm. Save money with your name on it. Put a rule on the pantry. Make the bed. Touch the dog. Let time be the thing that does the heavy lifting while you do the small lifts. Eat, drink water, stand in the shower until the steam becomes a room you can live in. Tonight he's at the stove and the kitchen smells like onions, honestly sweating. I'm on the floor half folding laundry, half watching him move in a body that is still learning how to be with me and not with a fantasy strategically placed across an ocean. He turns, checks my face, smiles a question I can answer any way I want. Tea, he asks low, offering something too simple to be a lie. Please, I say, and he reaches for the chipped mug we bought at a market where we both tried on hats and pretended to be versions of ourselves we might actually keep. He brings it over with his empty hands and he sits and our knees touch and the kettle hums and the whole room agrees softly, stubbornly that boring might be the most beautiful thing left.